BBOR Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Black Box Nerd 88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And welcome to our discussion on the writer Robert Graysmith. First, I would like to give a shout out to YouTube user Playtime, who made a request for an upload about several months back. An upload on Robert Graysmith as a Zodiac killer suspect, and this was in the summer. And Playtime recently sent me some material on further allegations against Robert Graysmith and his connections to the Zodiac killer mystery. And I would say that even one more person also requested an episode on Graysmith as a Zodiac suspect. And what I said about this channel was I wanted it to be done in a way where any subject is fair game. And I thought that, well, if we're going to be true to that, perhaps we can actually explore this idea. But my response in the past was about not doing an upload on Robert Graysmith as a Zodiac killer suspect was twofold. Number one, I thought that it would be so much more valuable to talk about his connections to the Zodiac killer mystery as an active participant in the setup. I mean, we're not talking only about murders, but also the mailing of the letters and the ciphers, particularly in the creation of the Zodiac ciphers, as well as some other artistic material, because Graysmith was indeed a cartoonist. And the second thing that I would say on that note is I would like to use this as an opportunity to talk about all of the writings of Robert Graysmith as a whole. So that's what you can see from the title. The original title for this one was going to be Zodiac Killer Robert Graysmith ... as a suspect, but I thought that we could do one more on a comprehensive sort of discussion about Robert Graysmith and all of his writings, which is something that I've been meaning to do for a time. The first thing I would say about Graysmith is that people seem to be in somewhat of an agreement that Robert Graysmith published a book in 1986 called Zodiac that was filled with a lot of intentionally deceptive material, in short, lies, as well as blatant fabrications, material that is not accurate and does not correspond to the case files. One of the possible motivations for this is that he was indeed an active participant in the Zodiac killer mystery, as we said, to a certain effect. But then we could also say that Graysmith gets involved with this, perhaps because he wanted to do that for profit, for money. And thankfully, we have so many resources on the internet. It really is quite remarkable. I just was trying to find out what's Robert Graysmith's net worth, and we have a website called networthroom.com. I mean, you can really get anything. So we have a huge profile here on Robert Graysmith as an individual, and it says in February of 2020, Robert Graysmith's net worth was just over $5 million, just short of $5.1 million. So as a writer, he has become very successful, and as I understand, he is now in retirement, but this was definitely something that was very profitable for him. The other thing that I had learned only in 2019 was just that Robert Graysmith went on to publish so many other books on various subjects, which we'll say some important things about in a second. But if you want to look at any clues in the Zodiac killer mystery relating to Robert Graysmith, this, as we said, number one is that he wrote a very inaccurate book, and the motivation for that could be is that he was trying to hide some things about himself. And the other thing is a possible solution to the 408 cipher, or the final line at the bottom, can be encoded with Robert to spell out Robert Smith II if you pull down certain letters from the Zodiac's misspellings. But we've talked about that one on the channel before, and we are currently doing a book discussion on The Myth of the Zodiac Killer by Thomas Henry Horan, and you can always hit that like button and subscribe if you would like to follow along with these developments and follow along with that discussion. And to anyone listening in the future, I would invite you to check that one out as well. And we're going to talk more about the solution to the 408 cipher, talking about the final line. Most of the 408 has been decoded. We will talk more about that in the book discussion on The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. So with this one here, I would like to point to something different, and I would like to present you with a new piece of evidence showing that either Robert Graysmith, maybe he was the Zodiac killer, but I'll give you a big reason why he wasn't. And the second thing to say is a new piece of evidence showing some involvement of Robert Graysmith in the Zodiac killer mystery. And that is, if we look at the Halloween card, we will see a skeleton, and you're going to see some eyeballs, and you're going to see lots of dots. And if you look at the skeleton's eyes, you will see two dots that have been in place of the eye sockets, more or less. And we recently did an episode on David Gold and his book, My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. And while I don't think David Gold is too credible, he brought up one point that he says that his the solution that he believes to the Z13 cipher is connect the dots. And I even had to count out the letters like CONNECT. Yeah, okay, connect the dots. I guess that has 13 letters in it. I don't think that that was David Gould's own original observation, but that was the first time that I had heard that that was a possible solution to the Z13 cipher. I'm pretty sure he said that he got that from somewhere else. So then I began looking at the Halloween card, and what I noticed was perhaps one of the ways that we can connect the dots is to count the eyes, like the eyes that you'll see that are floating about, because the eyes of the skeleton have been replaced with dots, meaning that eyes and dots are one and the same. So if we connect them together, what do we get? R, G, S, and J. The J is done backwards in Zodiac tradition, and there'll be two things at the bottom which we can say in just a second. Robert Graysmith's birth name was Robert Graysmith Jr. RGSJ. I mean, he's also referred to as Robert Smith II, and then those could be the possible two dots that we've marked down at the bottom. So R.G. Smith Jr., R.G. Smith II, and then is this a possible signature that was showing that he was the one behind the artistic creations of the Zodiac Killer mystery and an active participant in the murders in some way, definitely conspiracy to commit murder, as well as one other thing we could say in a second. But as far as that goes, I would have to bring up the point that this is just something that I was doing, messing around with the doodle pad, more or less. But I was really quite surprised that it did come there. It does seem like a possible solution, but you perhaps could come up with other ways to connect the dots in the eyes on the Halloween card that would give you someone else's different initials. But if we have to say anything about this, I would also look that there is a pseudonym that was given to Arthur Lee Allen in Robert Graysmith's 1986 book Zodiac, and that was Robert Hull Starr. And Thomas Horn does not accuse Robert Graysmith of being the Zodiac Killer, being the writer of the letters, or anything like that in the Myth of the Zodiac Killer, the book that we're going through now. Instead, he accuses an individual named Hal Snook, and that Robert Graysmith was allegedly, possibly, maybe the disinfo agent. So if we look at Robert Hull Starr, then we can see Robert for Robert Graysmith, Hull for Hal Snook, and then Starr, meaning star sign or Zodiac Killer. There's almost this signature that has been embedded in the pseudonym of that they gave to Arthur Lee Allen, Robert Graysmith, Robert Hull Starr. So that is also a possibility. But I mean, no matter what, it's extremely bizarre to give your suspect a pseudonym that is your own name, no matter what. I mean, so don't even want to get into any sort of psychological undertone with that. But I said we were going to be talking about some other claims of Robert Graysmith and talk more about his books that he has written, because as I said, there actually turned out to be many more than I thought. He's most famously attributed to the book Zodiac and Zodiac Unmasked, and we have done a book discussion about Zodiac Unmasked here on this channel. I would invite anybody to check that out. And the next one, he also has a book called The Murder of Bob Crane, which was turned into a movie in 2002 called Autofocus that stars Greg Kinnear, and I believe the book has been repackaged as Autofocus, The Murder of Bob Crane, who was from the show Hogan's Heroes, as well as a radio personality and musician, a drummer to be precise. Even though I don't speak too highly of Graysmith now, I seem to be in agreement with everybody that he was a liar, but I'm definitely going to be adding this movie to my watch list in the future, Autofocus, and I don't think I would pay money for this book, but I would definitely like to see the movie if it's on one of the streaming services. And in regards to that, I think that we should also just keep going with the list and say that he wrote a book that I thought was a little bit more compelling, that I definitely wanted to read, called The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower, which talks about well, we'll say some things later on. The next one is The Laughing Gorilla. He has a book called The Sleeping Lady, The Trailside Murders Above the Golden Gate Bridge. And then he also has a book on the Unabomber called Unabomber, A Desire to Kill. Now, I would love to read that, only because we were talking about Ted Kaczynski recently, and we did an interview with Mark Hewitt on the channel, and we did a separate upload on the Zodiac Unabomber connection. And the life of Ted Kaczynski is absolutely worth learning about. I'm not sure how much Robert Graysmith could contribute to that. And he has a book called Blackfire, which is the this one here is the true story of the original Tom Sawyer, and then the Bell Tower, which is the case of Jack the Ripper. All of these are written by Robert Graysmith, as well as the book Amerithrax, The Hunt for the Anthrax Killer, And then he has some repackaging versions of the book Zodiac. And this is from thriftbooks.com, just where I was getting this material. Now, I said that he wrote a book called The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower, and out of all of the all of the items that were listed on that list, that was the one that caught my attention the most, and I thought, well, what is he talking about by that? And as I loosely looked into the subject, and first let's read the book description of The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower. This description may be from another edition of the product. Well, that was a valuable sentence. Oh my gosh, so entertaining, right? Marley Renfro wasn't famous, but she played a part in one of the most iconic scenes in American film, as Janet Leigh's nude body double in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. Only hours after seeing the film, a young man dubbed the Psycho Killer took the life of his first victim. Then Marley inexplicably vanished, leading to reports that she had been murdered. For Robert Graysmith, Marley's fate became an obsession, a personal love note to a beautiful dead girl. As I said, firstly, I think we can all agree as well that Robert Graysmith seems to have some issues. But after just a loose looking through a set of materials on the internet, I found that there were actually two body doubles for Janet Leigh in the movie Psycho, and talking about the infamous shower scene. The first one was named Myra Davis, and she was a woman who was indeed murdered in 1988. Myra Davis was the stand-in that was playing the role when they were testing out things such as lighting, and Marley Renfro, whom you just heard about there, was a Playboy playmate who was the nude shower double. Like in the nude scenes, she is the one who is playing the character only for the nude scenes. And even though she was just the nude stand-in, she spent 7 days working on that scene, and I mean, it has become one of the most famous scenes in all of cinematic history. But there's a very big reason why I'm trying to discuss all of this here, and what I would like to do is I would like to go over to some reviews that have been written about the book The Girl in Alfred Hitchcock's Shower. And this one is from Mike L., who says, "A big disappointment. The only real mystery is why the author is trying so desperately hard to create a mystery where none exists. He basically tries to splice together two stories that are only vaguely related to create a larger story full of mystery and intrigue, and the result is less than satisfying. Another thing that didn't really work for me was the way that the author inserted himself into the story. Some authors can make this kind of thing work to expound on the basic story and make it come alive, but unfortunately, at least in this instance, Robert Graysmith is not one of them. Film fans might consider it worth a read for some of the interesting bits of history, like some of the backstory regarding various aspects of the filming of Psycho and the filming of the shower scene, and the lifestyle of models working during the time period. If you're looking for a true crime or great mystery story, then you'll likely be disappointed." Think about those words right there in relation to the Zodiac Killer mystery. Think about some of those accusations that we were talking about with the myth of the Zodiac Killer, and talking about sharing disinfo and inaccurate information. And while I've never used these exact words here to describe Robert Graysmith's writing, I think that this guy, Mike L., hit the nail on the head when he said he basically tries to splice together two stories that are only vaguely related to create a larger story. Now, that's the real accusation that they have against him for the material around Zodiac, is that he took the police reports, the case files, he had access to them, as well as countless conversations with the detectives and reporters, and he is getting this information, and then he's adding in these fictitious additives, these fictitious alterations. In short, he is splicing together the truth, and he is splicing it with lies. I think that's a very good way of putting it. And we also should say that there is another review that is written here, although this one is done anonymously, where it's just also calling out Robert Graysmith in the same way that people are critical of him for his work around the Zodiac Killer. And this says that Robert Graysmith doesn't understand his subject at all, a woman whom he claims that he was obsessed with for decades. And then this person apparently has some first-hand connection to Marley Renfro, saying he claims that she was modest. On nude shoots, she was always doing long, limbering exercises in front of the cast and crew. She was a nudist who enjoys being watched. Number two, he states that Renfro is in no way pretentious or vain, and then apparently this person's saying that she was. He states that Renfro is so unassuming that she doesn't even care that she is famous, in a loose usage of that word, or even being admired as a nude model. When Graysmith finally met Renfro, he ran into her thanks to eBay, where he and she were both searching for pictures of herself. Renfro admitted that she was amassing a collection of her own nude shots. Number 4, he states that she is unique and that Renfro looks like nobody else. Well, that's impossible. She was a stand-in because she did look like Janet Leigh, and that's another thing that I did read about in the filming of Psycho, that Marley Renfro had to disrobe in front of Alfred Hitchcock, and he had to examine her body, say, oh, yeah, okay, well, she does look like a naked woman, more or less. Oh, no, of course, I mean, that was just... she looked like Janet Leigh, but that's the general idea. What they're saying again with this one is that Graysmith lied, Graysmith fabricated, and you heard that insightful statement about splicing sentences together. But I said we would say some things about the Zodiac Killer and why Robert Graysmith could not be the Zodiac. Number one, thanks to that website about personal info of famous people, the celebrity net worth one, we can see that Robert Graysmith is listed at being 5'9", and he weighed 77 kilograms. What the hell is a kilogram? No, I mean, he's 5'9", and then how do you explain the description of the person at Lake Berryessa who's around 6 feet tall, as well as being fat, as well as having his fat hanging over his belly? I mean, Robert Graysmith doesn't match any of these Zodiac Killer descriptions. If you look at the composite sketch after the Stein shooting on October 11th of 69, he also doesn't match those descriptions, and definitely different facial features, absolutely different. But what I could say is, if anything, you would have to go down the pathway of some variant of the group murder theory saying that Robert Graysmith was the shooter at Lake Herman Road, and I can only say that because there are no physical descriptions of the perpetrator at Lake Herman Road. There are no witness sightings of the perpetrator at Lake Herman Road, December 20th, 1968, and of course, you would also have to say that you could perhaps compose some type of theory in some way, saying that Graysmith committed the Lake Herman Road murders and he was the author of the Zodiac Killer ciphers, whereas you had somebody like Hal Snook murder Paul Stein, because Hal Snook does seem to be quite similar to the descriptions after the Stein shooting. And then who else are you going to bring in? Are you going to say that Don Chaney was the Lake Berryessa stabber, and that Don Chaney is actually one of the info agents as well, spreading news about Arthur Lee Allen? Because what we did learn about, thanks to citing in on the Zodiac Killer and the Zodcast, Drew Beeson, and all of his material, is that there is a link between Don Chaney and Paul Avery that goes back to Bakersfield Junior College when they were classmates at the same time. So then, but that's just expanding into some type of network and drawing circles. And firstly, I have to say that if I'm going to be critical of Graysmith for spreading inaccurate information in his books and his material, then perhaps I shouldn't do it as well. I mean, that's just an if. But the whole point is, I don't see how it could even be possible that Robert Graysmith committed all of the Zodiac Killer murders. I mean, I don't think that there's an ounce of physical evidence, even if somehow, some way, he turned up with the Zodiac Killer hood at Lake Berryessa or the wallet of Paul Stein. There is just so much physical evidence that is against Robert Graysmith in this. If you want to talk about how he could be an active participant in this, Graysmith was a cartoonist. He was an illustrator. He did the very famous illustration of Lake Berryessa, and in the photo that you've been looking at of him, he's also showing off some of his illustrations. That is something that we could have a genuine discussion about. There are major differences between the Zodiac letters and the Zodiac ciphers, and this is the reason why Graysmith becomes an active participant in the theories and such, or there are theories about Graysmith being an active participant, because the Zodiac ciphers are done in a very neat and meticulous way, whereas the letters are done in a very sloppy way. There's often a very strong tilt to the right in much of the Zodiac Killer handwriting, and the letters are oddly shaped, but the ciphers are very neat. And one point that Drew Beeson brought up as well was saying that these things were most likely written on a light table, and his suspect in the Zodiac Killer mystery is Donald Lee Chaney, who was a mechanical engineer who would have had access to a light table. Graysmith, as a cartoonist, would have also had access to a light table. It would have been very easy for Graysmith to compose these ciphers, as well as his other material that he did at the Chronicle. I mean, his other work, being a production assistant, handling all of the materials is what I meant to say, and this is some more stuff that we'll get into in the Myth of the Zodiac Killer book discussion. As far as Graysmith being a murderer, though, I mean, I really would say the evidence is insufficient, and the witness descriptions alone are pushing us towards some other type of person. And as far as a thrill kill club going on, where you would have people like Graysmith, Richard Hoffman, Don Chaney, and Hal Snook, I mean, that's just That is just taking a fact and unwinding it more or less, and that'd be on my part. I want it to be very clear. That's an if. But what I think is more valuable from this discussion, and if you remember anything from listening to this little podcast segment here, it is that Graysmith has a bad habit of taking two different ideas and splicing them together. He has a bad habit of using certain elements of truth in his writing and certain elements of fiction, but he doesn't tell the reader which is which, and this is the reason why he is getting into so much trouble, or his credibility has really been damaged. I would say, though, that Graysmith definitely knows how to get your attention. When I was reading this description of the girl in Alfred Hitchcock's shower, or just even seeing the title for the first time, I was like, now I want to read that book. When he talks about the Unabomber, I told you, well, I'd be curious what Graysmith would have to say. I don't really think I would learn that much in terms of hard facts that we couldn't get from other more reliable sources, but I get curious about it, or the anthrax killing. And not the laughing gorilla, though. But most of what he is talking about is really good at getting people's attention. But getting people's attention doesn't mean that he is actually telling any ounce of truth. It just means that he is good at marketing and not necessarily good at the investigative parts of storytelling. All right, well, that's all for me now. What do you think about any of the claims that we have made in this one here? What do you think about any of the comments that we have made? What do you think about the possible solution that I made up myself, Ned from Black Box Online Radio, an original about Robert Graysmith's Halloween card? Do you think that there is any possibility that Robert Graysmith was an active participant in the Zodiac Killer Mysteries, involved with the artwork and creations of things such as the Halloween card and the ciphers, and that he left signatures behind on them? If you disagree with that, please tell me why in the comment section. I would love to see your responses, and I would love to hear more about what you guys have to say about this. And also, there's another question that I would like to ask in conclusion. Would you like to hear a larger discussion on any of the books of Robert Graysmith? It probably would not come out until next year, because we're going to finish the book discussion on the myth of the Zodiac Killer, as well as doing some other topics, and also reshaping the channel in a few different ways. But if you would like to hear anything about this, would you like to hear a full-on discussion that would probably be about just a 1-hour one-shot segment on any of the books of Robert Graysmith, whether it's the Unabomber one or the girl in Alfred Hitchcock's shower? What would you say about that? And if we say a book discussion, we're not just going to summarize it, and we're not just going to talk about the good parts. We would really push back at some of these things. You heard those reviews right there when they're saying Graysmith is providing all of this inaccurate information, and he's also splicing together the truth and the fiction. We could do some of those discussions in the future if you would want. Another thing that I'm really tempted to do is to get Gerald Frank's book on the Boston Strangler and see if the accusation is true that Robert Graysmith used that as a template for writing his book Zodiac, talking about the Boston Strangler and those murders, and then just inserting the names like Arthur Lee Allen and this is how the Zodiac Killer mystery happened, based on Gerald Frank. So if you would like to hear about anything like that, please weigh in the comment section. This was even something that was sort of suggested by a YouTube user. A suggestion, although I took it in a different direction. Now, we've also done an upload on Graysmith Unmasked here on this channel. That's a documentary that's available on YouTube for free, and we did one response to that. So if you would like to listen to that one, that will be available in the description box here to hear more about Robert Graysmith and some of his disinfo. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening to some more of our content. All you got to do is listen, never asking for any money, but we do depend on your support. And that's all for me now. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.